what actually happens to everything you know the day you finally retire? Like, think about it.
It's a scary thought, honestly.
Right. All those hard lessons, your biggest breakthroughs, the specialized skills you've spent a lifetime just bleeding for, what happens to them?
Usually, they just disappear.
Yeah, exactly. If you're like most people, the moment you step away, all that hard-earned knowledge just completely evaporates. You spend decades climbing this massive mountain and you finally plant your flag at the summit and you look around only to realize, you're completely alone.
Which is the exact opposite of what true success should look like.
Right. So today we are welcoming you, our listener, who is, as always, inherently curious and looking to level up. We're doing a custom-tailored deep dive today that fundamentally challenges that entire solo climb narrative.
We really are.
We're unpacking a really comprehensive document titled 018 Mentorship and Multiplication.pdf.
And it is such a profound shift in perspective. Yeah. Like, we're taking these frameworks that are rooted in ancient biblical discipleship and applying them squarely to the modern crisis of leadership and legacy.
Which is so relevant right now.
Exactly. Because whether you're running a business or leading a community or just trying to leave a positive mark on the people around you, the structural and psychological concepts here are basically identical.
Yeah.
The document makes this not just a nice idea, but an urgent mandate. The ultimate antidote to irrelevance isn't building a bigger platform. It's the intentional one-on-one investment in another human being.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the core premise of the text is that keeping your knowledge to yourself is just a dead end.
A mathematical dead end, really.
Yes. Moving from simply being a learner who hoards information to becoming a multiplier who builds an enduring legacy, that requires a completely different set of mechanics.
It really does.
And to understand how to build that legacy, we basically have to look at the actual math of human influence.
Right, because most leaders operate on a system of addition.
Which is the default, right?
Yeah, addition is the default setting for almost everyone. You have one expert at the front of the room, and they teach a crowd of dependent followers.
Like a traditional classroom.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
But the glaring limitation of addition is the bottleneck of your own exhaustion.
Oh, man. Burnout.
Exactly. If you're the single source of truth, your impact is permanently capped by your personal bandwidth. You can only answer so many emails or take so many meetings before you just crash.
You literally run out of hours in the day.
Right. But multiplication completely flips that dynamic.
Yeah.
You equip a few people who are then fully capable of equipping others.
Which brings us to a really specific formula highlighted in the material. It's drawn from the Apostle Paul's instruction to his mentee, Timothy.
Yeah, 2 Timothy 2.2.
Right, 2 Timothy 2.2. And it outlines 4 distinct generations of influence happening all at the same time.
It's a brilliantly efficient chain reaction, honestly. You start with the first generation, which is Paul, the mentor. He passes his wisdom deeply to the second generation, Timothy, the disciple. But the mandate doesn't stop there.
He doesn't just say, keep this to yourself.
No, Paul explicitly instructs Timothy to entrust everything he's learned to faithful people. So that's generation 3.
Got it.
And the criteria for those faithful people is that they must be able to teach others also, which is generation 4.
Wow. So you're not just teaching a student.
Right. You're teaching your student how to be a teacher.
To bring this out of the ancient world for a second, the source text shares this amazing story of a retired engineer named Miguel.
Oh, I love the Miguel story.
It's so good. He didn't start a massive nonprofit. He didn't launch some global marketing campaign. He literally just started a weekly cafe meeting with a few young men from his neighborhood.
Right, in a really busy coastal city. And we need to look at the mechanics of what Miguel was actually doing in those meetings.
It wasn't formal, right?
No, it wasn't a polished seminar at all. It was highly relational and, frankly, probably very messy.
Just life stuff.
Exactly. They talked about life, they read scripture together, navigated career failures, handled breakups.
Just being there for them.
Yeah, it was a quiet, relentless investment of time over 20 years. He was pouring into them with the specific intention that they would pour into others.
And because he cultivated them to lead, the math eventually just took over. Over 2 decades, those initial few young men started mentoring their own groups.
Right.
One launched a college initiative. Another organized a massive outreach program for at-risk youth. Another became a pastor and planted a church.
Incredible.
All from one retired engineer drinking coffee. The impact multiplied into dozens of leaders that literally transformed the landscape of an entire city.
Hmm.
To me, it is exactly like compound interest in finance.
That's a great way to look at it. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this concept of spiritual mathematics completely removes the modern pressure we all feel to be these massive influencers at scale.
Oh, the pressure to go viral.
Exactly. You do not need a massive platform or a huge institution to change the world. Depth produces a far more lasting impact than breadth.
Quality over quantity.
Right. Think about the historical model of Jesus. He routinely walked away from massive crowds just to focus intensely on 12 individuals.
He literally hid from the crowd sometimes.
Yes. And then focused even more deeply on just 3 of them.
It goes back to that finance analogy. You earn interest on your interest. If you just put $1 under your mattress, that's addition. It only grows if you manually add another $1.
Right.
But mentoring someone who is equipped to mentor 2 others, the growth eventually does the heavy lifting for you.
It scales itself.
Exactly. But if we accept that deeply investing in a few people is the key to this exponential curve, the next logical question you're probably asking is, what do these mentoring relationships actually look like in practice?
Because it can seem intimidating.
Totally. Like if you're listening to this on your commute right now, you might be thinking, I do not have the time to adopt someone for the next 20 years.
Which is a completely valid fear. And it brings us to the different archetypes of influence that the document outlines. Mentorship is not a rigid, one-size-fits-all contract.
Thank goodness.
Right. So the first archetype is the long-term, or the father-son model. This is like Paul and Timothy.
Okay, the classic model.
Yeah, this is the decades-long investment. It involves deep personal bonding, and it often requires, psychological frameworks for maintaining connection across long distances, primarily through letters in their case.
So it's a very profound, lifelong tether.
Exactly. Then you have the prophetic transfer model, and the example here is Elijah and Elisha.
Oh, this one is intense.
Very. This is all about extreme proximity. Elisha essentially shadowed Elijah everywhere.
Just watched his every move.
Proximity is vital here because Elisha needed to observe how his mentor handled crisis and opposition.
You can't really teach that in a classroom.
No, you can't teach crisis management in a vacuum. It has to be witnessed. Crisis reveals character, and that intense shadowing culminated in Elisha asking for a double portion of Elijah's spirit to continue the mission.
But wait, let me push back on both of those for a second.
Sure.
Because they still sound incredibly intense. I think a lot of people listening avoid mentoring because they think it's exactly that, like a 20-year marriage or someone living in your shadow.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah. If our goal is to get the listener to start multiplying today, those models represent a massive barrier to entry.
They do, which is why the third archetype is arguably the most actionable for a busy professional today. And that's seasonal mentorship, or the door opener model.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
The prime example here is the relationship between Barnabas and Paul. And we have to remember the psychology of that moment in history.
Right, Paul had a lot of baggage.
A ton. When Paul first converted, he was terrified of the community he was trying to join. And they were utterly terrified of him because he used to persecute them.
Right, he was literally hunting them down with them.
Exactly. He was a massive reputational liability.
He couldn't even get in the room. Everyone thought it was a trap.
Precisely. Enter Barnabas. Now, Barnabas had immense relational capital, and he made the conscious choice to spend it on Paul.
Wow.
He stepped in, vouched for him, and provided this protective shield of credibility for a very brief but highly strategic season.
So it wasn't a lifelong thing.
Not at all. They didn't walk together forever.
Yeah.
Their paths actually eventually diverged over a disagreement. But Barnabas's seasonal intervention unlocked Paul's entire lifelong trajectory.
I absolutely love that. So your only role as a mentor might just be to open a door that is permanently locked to the mentee.
That's it.
You just lend them your credibility for a critical window of time. You don't have
Yeah.
to marry them. You just have to say, hey, I know this person. Give them a shot.
It lowers the barrier to entry so much.
It really does. You can start mentoring today just by asking yourself, whose name can I mention in a room they aren't in yet?
That is such a practical takeaway. But this raises an important question, though. Once you've opened the door or established that connection, what are the actual mechanics of shaping that person?
Right. What are the actual tools?
Yeah, how do you form their character without just lecturing them into submission?
Yes. Let's open up the mentor's toolkit. Because the methods used during these interactions totally dictate whether you are building a leader or just creating a clone of yourself.
Very true.
The first tool the text mentions is Socratic questioning. The material points out that Jesus frequently answered questions with other
He
questions.
did that constantly.
Yeah, like when
Yeah.
someone asked him, "Who is my neighbor?" He didn't just give a dictionary definition or a bulleted list. He responded with a story, a narrative puzzle that forced the questioner to examine their own assumptions and arrive at the answer themselves.
The psychology of Socratic questioning is just brilliant because it tackles the root of human dependence.
That's so.
Well, if someone comes to you with a crisis and you immediately solve it for them, you feel great, right?
Yeah, you feel like the hero.
Exactly. You feel like the savior. But you've just trained them to return to you the next time they face a hurdle.
Oh, man. You made them dependent.
Right. By asking questions like, what fear is driving this hesitation for you? Or, what do you think is the real priority here? You force them to engage their own critical thinking.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's basically the difference between handing someone a map and teaching them how to read a compass.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like, if you just give answers, you're handing them a map. You're giving them the exact route for one specific problem. But the moment they step off the edge of that map, they are totally lost.
And they have to come running back to you.
Exactly. They need a new map. But if
Yeah.
you ask the right questions, you are installing an internal compass. They learn how to navigate the terrain entirely on their own, no matter where they get dropped.
That is a phenomenal way to put it. Mentorship isn't an intellectual data transfer. It's holistic character formation.
Yeah.
But, questions alone can feel like an interrogation if there isn't mutual vulnerability.
Right. It can feel like a pop quiz.
Exactly. Which is why the second tool in the kit is storytelling.
And the text notes that humans are just wired for narrative, right? We don't run on raw data.
We really don't. And the crucial mechanism here is the strategic sharing of failure.
That's hard for a lot of leaders.
It is. A mentor standing at a whiteboard giving a flawless presentation on perseverance is fine, but it creates this illusion of perfection.
It makes them seem untouchable.
Right. But when a mentor shares a visceral personal story about a season where they completely failed or a moment they almost quit because of imposter syndrome, it destroys that pedestal.
It makes them human.
It builds profound trust and gives the mentee psychological permission to just be a work in progress.
Okay, so we have Socratic questioning and storytelling. The third tool is shadowing. And this is where mentorship has to move from just observation to actual participation.
This is the messy part.
Totally. The disciples didn't just sit in a lecture hall hearing sermons on compassion. They watched Jesus heal people out in the dirt, in the real world. Then they were eventually sent out to do it themselves.
Right.
But shadowing has this very specific three-step trajectory: watch, assist, lead.
And we really have to talk about the friction in that middle step.
The assisting part.
Yes, the assist phase is where most mentorships fall apart.
Really?
Yeah. First, the mentee watches you do it. That's easy. But then you have to let them assist or try it themselves while you watch. This requires the mentor to surrender control.
Oh, that's the worst.
It is agonizing to watch a mentee fumble through a task that you could personally execute perfectly in 5 minutes.
The urge to just grab the steering wheel is so strong. You're just sitting there thinking, let me do it. It's so much faster.
Yes, but if you grab the wheel, you break the multiplication cycle entirely.
Oh.
You have to endure the messy inefficiency of them learning to drive and just offer feedback instead of taking over. Only then can you reach the third phase where they lead entirely and you just observe. It builds the genuine competence they need to eventually go mentor someone else.
Okay, so you've installed the compass, you've shared the stories, you've survived the agonizing, messy shadowing phase.
Barely survived it sometimes.
Right. But human memory is notoriously terrible. Like, even our most profound moments of clarity fade the second we get distracted by a new crisis.
Oh, true.
So for these compass reading skills to actually survive across generations, the wisdom has to be preserved. Which brings us to the architecture of memory.
And the blueprint places a surprisingly heavy emphasis on documentation here. It states plainly that while memory fades, written wisdom endures.
It's permanent.
Right. Think about some of the most famous documents in human history, like Paul's epistles to Timothy and Titus.
Okay.
Those weren't drafted to be global theological textbooks read by billions of people. They were originally just private, one-on-one mentorship correspondence.
Just a senior leader writing to a younger leader.
Exactly. A younger leader who was just struggling to manage a difficult crowd.
So through the simple act of writing it down, this private instruction became enduring collective wisdom.
Yes.
And the modern application the text recommends is keeping a mentorship journal, like tracking the specific prayers, recurring questions, and spiritual milestones of the person you're mentoring.
Which is such a powerful tool.
But I have to admit, when I first read this part, I immediately pushed back.
Why is that?
Well, if I'm sitting in a coffee shop having a deeply personal spiritual conversation with someone, and I just pull out a notebook and start taking notes, doesn't that make the relationship feel a bit clinical? Like a corporate performance review.
Like you're grading them?
Exactly. Hold on, Sarah. Let me just document that you're struggling with patience today. It feels weird.
I get that. But what's fascinating here is how the document counters that exact fear. The text argues that documentation actually proves your deep, long-term investment. Because personal development is usually agonizingly slow. A mentee might battle the exact same fear of failure for 6 straight months and feel utterly defeated. They think they haven't moved an inch.
Yeah, you lose perspective.
Right. But if you've been documenting the journey, you can open that journal and say, look at the specific words you used to describe this crisis a year ago versus the resilience you are showing today.
Oh, wow. So you're reflecting back to them the invisible trajectory of their own growth.
Exactly.
Because when you're in the thick of the woods, you can't see that you're actually climbing the mountain. You need someone else to show you the elevation change.
You become the archivist of their progress. The material actually shares the story of a mentor named Daniel.
Oh, yeah, Daniel.
Right, he spent decades guiding young leaders, and he always carried this small, battered notebook. After every session, he'd jot down the core insights, the recurring anxieties, and the specific frameworks that resonated with that person.
Just private notes.
Just for himself, yeah.
Yeah.
But over the years, he started noticing distinct patterns in human development. And eventually, those fragmented personal notes evolved into a highly structured discipleship curriculum.
That's amazing.
It was adopted by organizations across entire regions. His private documentation literally became a public roadmap.
Okay, having the tools, the Socratic questions, the journals, that is all great in theory. But out here in reality, life is just chaotic.
It is very messy.
Our schedules are overflowing. How do we sustain this level of investment when we're already exhausted?
That's the big question.
The material doesn't shy away from this at all. It acknowledges the real challenges, like time constraints, personality clashes, disengaged mentees, mentor burnout.
It even points out that Jesus' own disciples literally fell asleep on him.
Right.
When they were supposed to be praying during one of his most critical moments of crisis, they just fell asleep.
It's a very grounding detail, honestly. Failure, fatigue, and disappointment are just baked into the process.
They are. And the solution the text gives to navigating this friction is a fundamental paradigm shift. Mentorship cannot be treated as a separate project that you bolt onto the side of an already exhausting life.
It can't be another meeting.
No, it has to become a lifestyle. It's a lens through which you view the interactions you are already having at home, in the workplace, and in your community.
So you aren't adding a new 3-hour meeting to your calendar. You're bringing intentionality to the lunch break you're already taking.
Exactly.
And to help operationalize this, the source provides some specific, actionable to-do list exercises. My favorite is the discipleship capture exercise.
Oh, this one is so practical.
It is. It takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Basically sit down and do a complete mental sweep of every unspoken mentorship commitment or idea bouncing around in your head.
Because we all carry that low-level cognitive load, like, oh, I really should check on how John's new job is going. Or, I meant to send Sarah that article on leadership.
It just sits in the back of your mind.
Right, so you write every single one of those thoughts down to get them out of your head. And then you categorize them. Immediate actions, items you're waiting on, or future projects.
It is literally a productivity brain dump, but applied entirely to human relationships.
It really is.
And honestly, it targets that exact feeling of guilt we all have when we realize we haven't texted a friend in 3 months. Instead of letting that guilt paralyze you, you externalize it. It's like making a daily diet out of mentorship, rather than treating it like an exhausting seasonal crash diet where you try to fix someone's life in one weekend.
Right, which never works anyway.
Exactly. You are just trying to define the next spiritual action.
And by defining that next spiritual action, we completely remove the mental friction that causes us to procrastinate.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, often the reason we don't reach out isn't because we don't care. It's because the idea of mentoring feels like this massive, heavy obligation.
It feels like a second job.
Exactly. But if the next spiritual action is just sending a two-sentence encouraging text message or setting up a quick coffee date, the barrier drops to basically zero. Mentorship stops being this overwhelming mountain you have to climb and simply becomes the next logical step on a path you are already walking.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? Whether you're managing a massive team in a corporate office or leading a ministry, or honestly just trying to raise good, resilient humans in your own living room. The ultimate reality is this.
Yeah.
Your true legacy will never be measured by what you achieved on your own. It won't be measured by the summit you conquered solo while everyone else just watched from the bottom.
It just won't.
It will be measured entirely by who is glowing, who is thriving, and who is leading because of your influence.
The transition from addition to multiplication is really the transition from fleeting personal success to an enduring multi-generational legacy.
Beautifully said.
And the blueprint leaves us with a really profound final thought. It strips away all our standard excuses of busyness or lack of expertise or fear of commitment.
Okay, lay it on us.
It simply asks this: if the future strength of the next generation depended entirely on the disciples you invest in today, what would you start doing differently right now?
Wow. That is a question that demands an immediate answer. Don't leave that mountain peak empty. Find someone, lend them your credibility, ask them the hard Socratic questions, and teach them how to read the compass. Take that next action step today. Send the text, make the introduction, schedule the coffee. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.